BruCast is back, baby.
This BruCast episode is brought to you by the BruCast Store. Explore a store filled with awesome goodies from hoodies to t-shirts to mugs. We've got you covered. Stay in style with BruCast. Embrace the shock, set the trend. Visit now bru-cast.com/store. Link below.
Back with the fire, can't you see the flames? From Deutschland steps comes the BruCast name. Voices like thunder breaking all the chains. Unleash the fury like a runaway train.
Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another BruCast episode. If it's your first time watching the show, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rate the show 5 stars. This will ensure that the podcast recommends to even more people and allow me to keep doing what I love. BruCast also on Instagram, X, and TikTok, where I upload shorts with the highlights of the show. So follow now, BruCast on Instagram, X, and TikTok. Links in the description below.
Here we thrive, we survive!
Hey there, BruCast fans. Welcome back to another BruCast episode. Please make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Leave a comment. I want to read all your comments. I want to know what you thought about today's episode. So please let me know. I want to read all your comments. Yeah, that's about it. So hopefully you guys enjoy today's show. I think it's going to be a very interesting one. Our guest today is Nadler, and I'd like to welcome you. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me, bro.
Thank you so much for being here. I need to ask you, why am I fat? Why is everyone fat nowadays? What's up with that?
So it's funny. So, I like, I like that you're keeping the discussion a little bit lighthearted, because obviously talking about people's weight can be uncomfortable or off-putting, or, people don't like to talk about their weight either to their friends or to their doctors or providers. So I often employ the strategy of trying to inject a little humor in the conversation. So I appreciate the start with that sort of tone. So, and it's interesting because fat didn't used to be such a negative word. Like now it's such a negative word that people actually don't even sometimes think it should be used anymore. But it really just means the tissue in your body that stores energy.
Really? What's the new word for fat then?
Well, you have obesity, because that's a disease, right? Okay. And fat is sort of an adjective. You call someone fat. You asked, why am I fat? But now we understand that obesity is a disease and not a lifestyle choice. And, so using that term is not really necessarily, patient-centric, right? It doesn't help people feel good about themselves or want to do something about themselves or about their health. So we tend to talk about people with obesity. And I think that's actually probably one of the biggest misconceptions. And I still get a ton of trolls on my YouTube channel or when I, whatever, telling me that, if people would just stop eating so much or just work out more or get up off the couch or whatever, that there wouldn't be an obesity problem that's now affecting about 40% of Americans, but also affects people worldwide. Like it's in countries that you never would expect obesity to be an issue, but it is now, including places like Southeast Asia, where people get diabetes at a lower weight than they do in the US. So really the awareness around the world has to pick up. But I sort of dodged your question, which is, why are you struggling with your personal weight? And the answer to that is complex, and it probably has to do with your genetics, something called epigenetics. It is impacted by your environment for sure. Like if you are going to go out and eat, 4 hamburgers a day and drink a 2-liter bottle of Coke, that's not going to help. But most people who struggle with their weight aren't doing that. Actually, most people who are struggling with their weight actually are trying to make it better, and it's just not working. And then there's this whole ultra processed food world that's coming more into focus now. People are sort of understanding it more now, where a lot of the foods that we eat, and not all ultra processed food, which is what makes it complicated, but a lot of the foods that we eat either encourage us to eat more, change our brains so that we want to eat more and eat more sweets. Or, you know, some people have gone as far as thinking that it causes food addiction, which is,
Oh yeah.
you know, I'm not sure I really necessarily buy into that for most people, but there are a lot of, like, we know if you eat sweets, for instance, the areas of your brain that light up, like the dopamine regions of your brain, those are the same brains that light up if you know, use illicit substances or just gain pleasure from other mechanisms. So there's a lot of brain chemistry that is shared between sort of these ultra processed foods and eating sweets and addiction. So it's crazy. It's kind of a crazy, complicated thing going on.
I know for a fact that food addiction is a thing for sure, 100%. Like Coca-Cola, like when we open a can of Coca-Cola, the sound that it makes has been studied to be the most pleasant and addictive sound ever. The whole it's not necessary the whole thing. They designed it apparently. A lot of chips. When you eat the chips, I forgot one of them.
Cheetos, right? So Cheetos are designed to have the crunch that is aesthetically pleasing. Again, the sound of the crunch, and you actually enjoy the crunch, but then the inside like melts away, so you don't actually get any feeling of fullness or any feeling of not wanting to eat. So you're right. There's actually a whole the food industry spent a lot of time and money on figuring out how to make these foods as appealing as possible. I don't think they intended to make food addicts, because I don't think the science back then, even people knew about that. But yeah, for sure, for sure they studied, what sound, or a can of Pringles, can of Coke, can of Pringles, you know, they're all designed, the texture, the sweetness, the saltiness, but yeah, the sound and the like things that most people may not even have thought of, but sound and texture are engineered so that you can't stop. And I can't remember that was somebody's slogan. You can't eat just one, and that was on purpose. That might have been Pringles too. That was on purpose. They wanted it to make it so you couldn't eat just one.
You can't. I remember that. I just don't remember which one. You can't
stop. I can't just eat one. You can't stop at just one. I can't. It might have been Pringles, an old Pringles slogan, but I don't remember.
It's Lay's potato chip.
Oh, Lay's potato chips. There you go.
It's also chips, so it's fine. So, for the audience, to understand a little bit why we're talking about that. So, what about you introduce you a little bit better, Evan, because you have some authority on the subject.
I'm not just some clown that you found on the internet that can talk about this. Yeah, no, I've been doing this for over 20 years. So I actually am a pediatric surgeon, which is maybe not what people might expect from someone who knows about the engineering of foods. But I got interested in treating children with obesity actually more than 20 years ago, and I've sort of dedicated my professional and academic career to first the treatment of children with obesity, and obviously surgery, since that's what I was trained to do. But more recently, I've really focused on educating the public. I'm trying to write a book on this topic because the understanding of childhood obesity is even further behind than the understanding of adult onset obesity. You know, there's still lots of people out there who just think children who are struggling with their weight will grow out of it, when the data are actually 100% the other way. Like, if you have obesity as a child, your likelihood of getting out of that situation is really quite small. unless it's treated. And so like the last couple of years, I've been just focusing on educating the masses, writing my book. I actually started a telemedicine practice for children with weight issues because of the lack of even providers that are out there that are willing to see the patients and deal with it. So obviously not doing surgery via telemedicine, but using medications. And obviously the new GLP-1 medications have also raised the awareness about the disease. But anyway, yeah, I've been doing it for 20 years. I was the busiest pediatric bariatric surgeon in the United States for basically most, if not all, of my career. And then gave it all up because no matter how many kids I treated myself, the problem was just so massive that I felt compelled to try to do more on a more global scale. So here I am on the BruCast, hoping that someone out there is listening and is going to get inspired by my words and either reach out or do something on their own and just try to make the world sort of better when it comes to understanding this disease and understanding the people who suffer from it.
I'm sure they will. Welcome to the BruCast. So I need to ask you why you focus so much on child. What is so different about child obesity compared to adult obesity? Because from my eyes, someone who's not part of this world, it's just obesity, like it's the same. But you say
Right.
it's not.
Well, that's a great point actually, and I couldn't have set myself up better for my like if I paid you to ask that would have been perfect. It's a perfect question because so obesity is what we call a phenotype, which is a fancy medical word for saying what things look like on the outside. So you're right. Obesity on the outside basically looks the same to everybody or in everybody, right? And we all know what it looks like, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist or a physician to look across the room or look in a mirror at ourselves and say, oh, that person is struggling with their weight. But the reality is that the disease comes from a bunch of different, what we call genotypes, which means pathways to get there. So for instance, most people don't know that if you have a certain brain tumor and you get surgery for that brain tumor, you end up with obesity. And that is much different than somebody who necessarily, who might just have issues with access to quality foods or, too busy to work out or whatever. So it runs the spectrum. And as we were talking about some of that sort of food addiction and other behavioral aspects can contribute. But in children who, to be honest, haven't even been on the earth long enough for those outside factors to cause a problem, their disease is much more driven by their genetics and their epigenetics and actually their exposures as a fetus inside of their developing mother, which again is like sort of mind-blowing for a lot of people because they don't really think about that these kids actually come out of the womb day one with a hugely increased risk of not only childhood obesity, but type 2 diabetes in childhood based on sometimes just their mom having gestational diabetes or gaining a lot of weight during their own pregnancy. So it's really, again, the field is emerging, the science is emerging, but even CNN picked up a story on sugar exposure in the first 1,000 days after conception and the risk of type 2 diabetes. So the first 1,000 days after conception include 9 months in utero. And I would argue that those 9 months in utero are probably more important than the next 600 days when you're, first 2 years of life, because your sugar exposure in those 2 years of life is pretty minimal because it's just baby formula for the most part, or breast milk or whatever. But there's a strong association. And we know, again, that moms who develop gestational diabetes during their pregnancy pass that diabetes risk on to their child, to their unborn child, and then to their child once they're born. So when people ask me what I would do to try to make an as big an impact on obesity and childhood obesity as we can as a community, as a medical community. I always talk about educating young, either young parents or young parents to be about their own health and getting their own health in order before they have kids of their own.
I think what I'm still struggling to understand is that you say that obesity is a genetic disease, but you still need to eat in order to retain all of those calories. So
Sure.
you must play a certain role in all of that. You must, at some point in your life, eat unhealthy foods in order to start getting all of this sugar into you're putting the sugar into your body, right?
But that's, yes, but no, because that's the key. Like, if for people to really understand it, they need to like spend a day in my clinic where I'll see an 8-year-old with obesity who eats exactly the same as other 8-year-olds and exercises the same as other 8-year-olds. In fact, I was talking to a family today. And in this family, and this happened to me all the time in my clinic, family has, let's say, 3 kids. All 3 of them live in the same household. 2 of them are normal weight or even underweight, and 1 struggles with weight. And all 3 kids eat the same and have the same sort of activity level. So for adult onset obesity, I think more of it may come down to the behavioral differences that you're talking about, like maybe not eating as healthy. But when it comes to kids, and it's actually another reason why I recommend that young parents get their own health in order, because when those kids are born and those kids are learning from their parents how to eat and what to eat, if those parents are already on board with eating healthy and exercising more and those lifestyle changes, then that kid will learn those habits. And obviously the habits you learn as a young child are the ones that you generally keep the rest of your life.
Oof. Now I understand what you mean. Like there's several factors at play here.
Right. Well, that's why it's complicated. And that's why that goes back to the phenotype genotype discussion, because everybody looks the same, which is what you said. And that's true. But you just don't know how that individual got there. And so, like, when I talk about obesity stigma and obesity bias, I try to tell people, listen, you don't know. Again, that patient could have had a brain tumor, or that patient could have been, has a true, there are some genetic diseases that, like single gene defects that cause obesity that obviously patients have no control over. And those patients get obesity no matter what they eat. And you just don't know if the person you're talking to or is a coworker with or whatever, you don't know how they got to their place in life. So I just try to tell people, a little bit of compassion and a little bit of empathy can go a long way, because you just don't know. You just don't know what that person has been through.
Going back to the pregnant mom for a second, you mentioned that if she eats any type of sugar during the first 1,000 days of the pregnancy,
that was one study in,
that was one study.
And it wasn't,
okay.
Yeah, and it was the amount of sugar, not just any sugar. And I don't remember what the threshold level was, but the point was just that you should, try to limit your sugar intake as a pregnant mom. And again, that may or may not be appropriate for every pregnant mom, but the point of the article was just showing there was a link between those two, between sugar consumption and diabetes and obesity risk. And the problem with all those studies is it's hard to show causation. It's much easier just to show an association. So you don't actually know if it was the sugar intake or, again, the genetics of the parents who, were more inclined to eat sugar, so you don't actually know what the causative factor was. But the point is it was more just, and there's actually a more recent study that showed that moms with diabetes or who developed gestational diabetes, their baby during pregnancy, their babies had a 20% higher risk of autism spectrum disorder. And again, I can't explain to you why that happens, although some people do believe that insulin resistance, which is what causes diabetes, is really bad for your brain. But it just was, and it came up during the sort of looking for, in the US, the current health secretary is spending a lot of energy on trying to find causes for autism, but I think most of us who are medical people believe there is no single cause, and that it's like, what's the right word? It's like a fool's errand, I think is what is one of the terms. But anyway, that's when that study came to my attention, because, again, if you're there, we know there's genetic factors that predispose to autism, and the same thing goes for obesity. There are genetic factors that predispose to it. Doesn't necessarily cause it, but it increases your risk.
I'm glad that you touched on the subject because I wanted to ask you exactly about it. So their statement is that they found a cure for autism, and me here in Germany is like, what? As far as I know, my understanding beforehand was that autism is actually a byproduct of the human brain evolution. Like there was a reason for it to exist, the same way that psychopaths, they have an evolutionary explanation, So for me, you found, like, when they said we found a cure for autism, like, okay, could you explain a little bit more? Did you know what they meant by that?
Yeah, so I spend a lot of, well, maybe not a lot, but I spend a fair amount of time doing U.S. cable TV news segments where I'm very nonpartisan, and I'm very just fact-oriented and fact deliverer, because I feel like that's my role. My role is not to be a politician. So the facts about autism are that it is likely developed. It's likely a combination of a genetic susceptibility and then an environmental trigger that happens at a specific time that no one really knows what specific time that should be. But it's all most likely in utero. It's all most likely before birth. So all this, like the most recent thing where he said that Tylenol during circumcisions causes autism. I couldn't even bring myself to talk about that on TV, because there was nothing I could say that would even be slightly nonpartisan. Like the only thing I could say is that's stupid. And that's stupid is not something you can say. You can say that on the BruCast, but I'm not sure I can say that on cable TV news in the US. But it's stupid. But anyway, the cure, the thing. So there is a drug called leucovorin, which is, I think it works through vitamin B12. And that particular drug can improve autism symptoms in a certain subset of people with autism who have a particular genetic makeup where their B12 processing isn't quite normal or whatever. But it's only for that very small subset of people. That drug doesn't work for any of the other people with autism. So unfortunately, it's not just people in the US, and I can't speak to the rest of the world as much, but people in the US have sort of lost their trust in the medical community. And so lots of people get their information from the internet, from social media influencers, from sources that aren't necessarily vetted. And when our HHS secretary starts to espouse some of those same non-scientific findings and talks about them as if they're fact, it's not helpful. So yeah, I like sometimes try to position myself as a de-influencer. Like I just go on whatever social media and other platforms is just to try to tell people here are actually the facts behind what's being said, and that the interpretation that you're hearing may not actually be the appropriate interpretation, because our HHS secretary is neither a doctor nor a scientist. So when he's interpreting studies, I don't necessarily, I don't know what I'm sure he's using other people to give him the information to amplify, but I don't know who those people are. And, his recommendation for our Surgeon General in the United States was a person who didn't even finish her medical training. So again, I think unfortunately, COVID really injected politics into medicine in a way that was never previously a problem. And now it's a big problem. Now everything in medicine is like over politicized frankly, for reasons I don't quite understand, but it is where we are. And so that's why I'm out here trying my best to just tell people a more unfiltered, unbiased explanation of what the data show.
Yeah, and I think that's where you need to be. From what I heard, the mainstream media is dying. That's podcasting is the future. Like that's where you actually can get to know people. You mentioned earlier that you went to some TV cable news stations and you only had 5 minutes. And like, how can you actually have a human conversation during those 5 minutes? Here, I can push back a little bit, and then you can defend your opinion. It's a way more humane way of interacting and getting real information. I mean, not you don't know if it's real, but get more information so you can assess yourself.
The information for me is real. I'm giving you that. I'll tell you that. No, I'm just playing. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Yeah, but you're right. No, and unfortunately, like the attention span, the average attention span of people is like, seconds these days, right? So like, it's all sound bites. It's all like what's catchy, what's clickbait or whatever, and it is unfortunate. But I take those 5 minute things on TV. And I cut them into shorts, and then I put them on my YouTube channel or on Instagram or whatever. And a lot of them, get some traffic because, I don't know how many people are watching it in real time, but and as you know, all the mainstream media people now have websites, and they just, they put their broadcasts live in eternity on the internet. So, but again, it's I just do what I can, and again, if it's one person at a time or 5 people at a time or more, if I can just change a few of the minds out there to be a little bit more open-minded about, well, in my case, childhood obesity, but when I'm talking about the other things, just to take some of the information they're getting with a grain of salt. That's all I'm trying to achieve, I guess.
You touched on B12 earlier regarding autism. So it is confirmed that a lack of B12 is not cause autism, but can trigger it. B12 for the audience is what you get out of meat, right? So
well, B12 is actually, I think, more green leafy vegetable type foods. But and again, it is. I wouldn't say. Oh, now you're gonna fact check me in real time. Shit. If I'm wrong, I'm gonna be
vitamins. B12.
Animal-based foods such as meat. Oh, you're right. Okay.
Meat, fish.
Now my entire credibility has just been thrown out the window because
it's fine. Don't worry. I also make mistakes all the time. That's why I check it.
No, that's good. That's funny. I actually thought it was not that. I thought that was opposite, but it is, again, just in this one. So it's not a cause of autism, but in this one subset of people with autism spectrum disorder, it can help with their symptoms. So again, that's where like word choices and nuance are important, because when you say things like, the president of the United States went on and said, again, Tylenol causes autism. That is so not verified and likely untrue. But he says it at a freaking press conference for the whole country to hear. Tylenol causes autism. And that's not at all what the data show. There are some data that show that Tylenol exposure, again, in utero, so in pregnant moms, has been associated with an increased risk of autism. But there are other studies that show that it doesn't increase the risk of autism. And even if it increases, even if Tylenol exposure is associated with an increased risk of autism, you don't know whether it's the Tylenol that's causing the increased risk, or maybe it's the reason that the person is taking the Tylenol, like maybe pain or headaches triggers autism risk. So again, it's like when people, and unfortunately humans don't like gray, they like black and white. They like yes or no, right or wrong.
Yeah.
No one wants to hear it might be associated with causing, like that doesn't, Americans, or not Americans, people in general just don't like that. But unfortunately, medicine is one of those areas where there's tons of nuance, and it's very hard to say, like we can say smoking causes lung cancer. Yes, we can say that, but there aren't as many definitives because it doesn't cause lung cancer in everybody. There are people who smoke every day of their lives and never get lung cancer. So it can't be so linear. And that's why it's hard for people to sometimes accept what the medical community is saying, because we do hem and haw a bit, like we do sort of couch our comments, because there is, especially in science, even in the best studies, we talk about like a 95% confidence interval, or statistically significant to 0.05. But what that actually means is that even in the best studies, there's a 5% chance that the data that you're looking at are just random and not due to the intervention that you're doing.
Really?
Yeah, that's so statistics, while it's like the most, for many people, one of the most boring topics to discuss, I actually, on my YouTube channel, made a whole episode about statistics to try to explain to people the bell curve and how, scientific studies are conducted and what it means when people talk about statistical significance. Because even in that case, right, you can't say for sure. You can say that it's statistically significant. You say that there's a 95% chance that it's true, but you can't say 100%. And in medicine, there are very few things that are 100%. So again, people don't like that, but that is unfortunately the way it is.
What I heard before is that statistics is all about how you present. Depending on the graph that you present to the person, they might convey actually the opposite of what you're trying to convey, just because you're a bad presenter. That's the power of statistics and the way you present it. It's insane.
There's a joke. What's the there's
you're
there's
frozen.
lies.
1 second. Your camera is frozen.
Oh shoot. It's because my Wi-Fi probably is no good. Let's see if I'm so sorry about that. I'm in a hotel.
No problem.
And I can't control the Wi-Fi.
Guys, we're going to go in a short... you know what? Let's go into our sponsor break, and we're going to be right back. See you in a second, everyone. Parents, have you been searching for an app that's both fun and educational for your kids? I've got something exciting to share with you today. It's called Fantastic Plus. Fantastic Plus is a free app where education meets entertainment, designed specially for children ages 2 to 12. It's built by experts, completely ad-free and totally safe, so you can feel confident handing your phone or tablet to your little ones. Inside the app, kids will find a world of engaging content. Their favorite cartoons, audiobooks and songs to spark imagination, educational games that make learning fun, and all of that to keep them entertained while supporting their development. Fantastic Plus is available on iPhones and iPads and even works offline. So whether you are on a road trip, flying, or just at home, your kids will always have something to enjoy. So if you're ready to give your kids a space that's both fun and educational, download now Fantastic Plus for free on the App Store. Fantastic Plus, a safe and ad-free educational platform for kids. Link on the description below. All right, and we're back. Guys, go check it out. Fantastic Plus is an amazing app. It's our channel sponsor. So I go download it right now. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun. I mean, your kids. It's a app for kids. Let's see if the camera of our guest is working again. And it looks like it is. All
Yeah,
right.
I think I'm back. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So I was actually about to make a great joke, and then I got cut out. So there's the joke about statistics is there's lies, damn lies, and then statistics. And so the thing about statistics is you're right. It's sort of data can be presented differently and analyzed differently to sometimes be, I don't want to say manipulated, but to be in more support of whatever point you're trying to make. So yeah, that's something that you definitely have to be aware of if you're looking at their data yourself, because again, like if I told you that there's, it sounds different to you if I say there's a 95% chance that this is true versus there's a 5% chance that this is false versus this is true because it's statistically significant. So even just in the simplest of terms, it is, it's in how you say things, I guess.
I would say it's manipulation for sure. You're trying to manipulate someone. Like I'm Apple fanatic, right? I watch all the Apple keynotes. They are manipulating us all the times with those random statistics. They say, oh, the new iPhone is like 15% better, and then they have this huge bar that crosses the whole screen, and then the previous iPhone just below with a tiny bar. It's actually like, and they don't put a lot of numbers in there, right? It's just like it's very, very shady, I would say.
Well, and to be honest, that's what politicians do, right? Or at least in my country, they want you to agree with their opinion, so they give you the numbers that they think will help convince you of their opinion, and don't expose you to the numbers that they think don't support their opinion, and they cherry pick and all that stuff. And frankly, it's why I'm a nonpartisan sort of fact checker kind of guy, because I can't tolerate, whatever side of the political spectrum you're on. It bugs me that people just don't sort of just get the data straight up. Like just, the media, mainstream media in the US now, it's right wing or left wing, very few center, because nobody wants to watch the center, because they only want to watch the right or the left, depending what side they're on. So like there are just so few outlets that just are presenting the data.
Didn't Elon wanted to create a center, how do you call wing?
Yeah,
no,
like
it's not
center,
wing.
Yeah, center party.
Center party. There you go. What happened to that? He said he wanted to create it. He said he started creating it, and then he abandoned it. He said, no, that's not the way to go. Do you know more details about this whole thing?
I don't, other than to say, it's like if you poll Americans, right? Most Americans are either center left or center right. Fewer Americans are far left or far right. So center party would be great, but all of the political machinery, all the money, the loudest voices are the extremes. So it would take someone sort of like Elon Musk, although I'm not sure. I think he shot himself in the foot for any chance of doing that with all of his Doge cuts and his affiliation with the current administration. But it would take somebody with his sort of money to create a center party, because you're not going to get endorsements from either side, so you'd have to fund it yourself. But this past weekend was this whole No Kings rally in the U.S., and whether that's going to amount to anything, who knows? But I think there's definitely an appetite for change in the United States. I think that most people feel like the two-party system is not working for the people anymore.
Oh, it's causing a lot of violence. I can see like all the murders that's happening over there, man. It's not pretty. So I'm researching right now. 1 second. Why Elon Musk actually gave up on the center party? Because I, from an external point of view, thought it was a great idea. So accordingly to the Independent, Elon Musk's plans to launch the America Party have reportedly been shelved, but I'm not allowed to read the thing. Oh, there you go. In late July,
Pay your subscription. They need their $10 or $5 or whatever.
yeah, get out of here. It's too expensive. My argument, man, there's so many. Okay, there's too much text, guys. By factor 2 to 1, you want a new political party and you shall have it. Musk rose at the time. When it comes to bankrupting our country with waste and graft, we lived in an open party system, not a democracy. Okay, despite Musk's plummeting popularity after he took a chainsaw to the federal government at the helm of Department of Government Efficiency, a poll last month found that 40% of Americans said they would back Musk if he created a third political party. So it seems like a great idea.
Yeah, there have been people who've tried it along the way, but again, I think it's been a two-party system for so long that I'm not sure what it would take. You might need a social media disruptor to be the it would take something that no one would think of to make it happen, because traditional methods are just so I think they're so ingrained, and you go to an election booth or whatever, a voting booth, and you got two choices and you just try to pick which one. And unfortunately for many Americans, the choices are like a lesser of two evils choice, as opposed to, this is someone who I really want to run our country. And obviously I can't speak to other countries, but I sometimes get the sense that the United States is not alone in its increasing polarization. I think the European countries are unfortunately going a similar route, although maybe not as extreme as the US. But this is not a political podcast, is it?
No, let's go back to obese kids. Let's talk about the kids. Earlier, I was watching this video that you have on your Podmatch profile before starting, and you said that you even had to treat a kid who was 4 years old and already obese. And my question to you would be, how'd you go about that? How do you work with a 4-year-old kid that is already obese?
Right. Well, as you can imagine, those are rare. And when you have obesity at 4 or 5, it is definitely a genetic disease. It's not anything else. But unfortunately, I've also taken care of 8 and 9-year-olds whose obesity is not caused by a single gene, like in the case of the 4 or 5-year-olds. But the part of the problem with obesity is that we didn't really understand the mechanisms behind it until more recently, where the GLP-1 medications have helped us understand some of the important mechanisms. But when you're talking again about a 4 or 5-year-old, you sort of just have to throw the kitchen sink at them. You just use whatever modalities you have, because the story I tell about a particular gene defect that I learned about.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you. What do you mean by throw the kitchen sink at them? I never heard that before.
Oh, that must be an American expression. I apologize for that. It means use everything you have.
Okay.
I don't actually know where that saying came from, because it doesn't make sense now that I've said it out loud. I'm like, why do we say that? But anyway. So you use all the tools in your toolbox, because if they're already having issues at 4, you know where their life is going. And the story I tell about my own experience learning about that was, and I might get the years slightly wrong, but I think it was 2014 or so when I first saw a child with this one particular gene defect at age 4, and she had severe obesity. But at that time, 2015, I wasn't, maybe it was earlier, maybe it was 2012. But anyway, at that time, I wasn't quite ready to perform bariatric surgery on a 4-year-old, because no one had done it in the world before. And although I was thinking about being the first. I wasn't sure I was ready to be the first. So that particular kid I worked with for a couple years, and in the time that I was working with them, they basically went from having severe obesity and having some medical problems to being wheelchair bound from her weight, unable to care for herself, unable to like even clean herself after she went to the bathroom because of her weight. And so that was, I think, 2-3 years. So then I eventually did surgery on her and helped her quite a bit. And I said to myself, well, this is a super rare gene defect and I'll probably never see it again. But if I do ever see it again, I'm not going to wait between 4 and 7 because I've just seen what happens between 4 and 7 and it's not good. And I didn't help this child any by waiting those 3 years. So just at a total happenstance, I saw another patient with that exact same gene defect, like later in the same year when I did the surgery on the first one. And I just, a 4-year-old, I just said to the mom, or maybe 5 at 4.5, I think, I was just like, listen, I've seen what happens if we don't do surgery. So if you're willing, that would be my recommendation. And it turns out that the mom was actually, came to see me because she wanted surgery for her kid because the research she had done herself suggested that that was her kid's best chance. And that kid did really well, although I did have to operate on that child again 7 years later. But when you don't treat those single gene defect cases, that the weight gain is like unstoppable. So now we would probably use both medication and surgery for children like that. Medications weren't even available back then when I was doing this. That's what I mean by the kitchen sink is you use medications, you use lifestyle, you use surgery, you use everything you have because their disease, again, is much different than the disease of someone who, started gaining weight at 40 because they, led a sedentary lifestyle or some life change or something. So that's why you really have to think about tailoring your treatment recommendations to sort of how the patient got there.
What is the name of this gene defect that you mentioned?
So that particular gene defect is called the melanocortin-4 receptor. And if you were to look that up in like PubMed or some other thing, you would see that I've actually published on that topic. I published my experience with these kids because melanocortin. So yeah, there it is. There you got it right there. Melanocortin-4 receptor mutation. Yep. So the it sort of it's a rare defect, more common in the United States for people to have a defect in one of their 2 copies of their gene, not both of the copies of their genes. And there's now a medication that may help. I think they're doing studies on that, whether it helps in the people who have one gene defect with that medication. It won't help this particular medication won't help if you don't have either receptor for that gene. So, but it's like, again, it's sort of, I talk a lot about the hypothalamus, which is a part of the brain that controls your weight set point and your appetite and satiety or feeling of fullness. And this gene disrupts this receptor, this gene defect disrupts all of that. So you don't really have any normal feeling of, you have an overexpressed sense of hunger and an underexpressed sense of feeling full.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I follow. You feel hunger, but you don't feel full?
Correct. You basically eat all the time.
Wow. So
Yeah.
what's the point of the medication? If the medication... So the medication prevents that.
Yeah.
Okay,
but that's only for patients who have... This particular medication, you have to have one functioning receptor.
Okay.
So normally you have 2 functioning receptors. It is uncommon, but still relatively more common to have one of your two receptors have a defect in it. But if you have both receptors that don't work, those are the patients that I would see with severe obesity at age 4 or 5. So,
Damn.
yeah. So again, that's so when people like, my perspective on obesity is somewhat unique or very unique because I've seen all of these sort of one-off cases, and they sort of helped me think about the disease differently because, the severe cases or the unusual cases do show you something or teach you something about the pathophysiology of the disease or the way to treat the disease, or it just helps, it helps, or it helped educate me because I didn't really think about any of these things until I would see some of these patients and I'd be like, wow, if one gene can do this to a patient in terms of their weight, how many other genes are out there that we don't really know about that maybe don't have this severe an effect, but might have a small effect. And then if you have 5 or 6 of those genes or 20 of those genes and they're working together, is that putting you at a place where you really have a lot of work to do to try to prevent yourself from getting obesity? And that's sort of where the field, especially in childhood obesity, is evolving to. It's like all about, and then we haven't talked about epigenetics, which is an even more complicated topic because that's the field of how the environment changes your genes. So it doesn't change your DNA, but it changes how your DNA go from DNA to proteins, how it actually functions, how your DNA functions. And now we know that you can even inherit epigenetic modified genes from your parents. So it might be that your parents had a gene that was okay, but then due to ultra processed foods or something else, that gene got modified. And then that modified gene got passed down to you as a kid. And now you're stuck with it, even though you didn't do anything in the initial, to initially change that gene. So now we're learning more and more about this epigenetic field. And I think that's in large part why there's been this obesity explosion over the last 50, 60 years, because we haven't really, the field of epigenetics has only been around for maybe, I think 20 years or maybe slightly less than that. But just understanding all these complicated and complex mechanisms, again, it's why just telling a kid to get up and exercise more or eat less or eat better for a lot of these kids just is not going to work at all.
But how come in the past there was no fat people? As far as I know, they even used.
What are you talking about? Have you never seen a Peter Paul Rubens painting of the fat ladies? They've been around since the Renaissance.
I know, but those are the royalty, right? As far as I know, they would present like fat people in circus because it was obese people in circus because it was not common at all.
Wasn't as common, but people with obesity have been around forever. Buddha was, I don't even know when Buddha was around, but Buddha was like, 8th century, 6th century, I don't know. But Buddha had obesity. So patients have had obesity forever. Now, why is it more so? That's a different question. And there are certainly some suggestions that the change in food quality and food processing in the 70s may have helped the increase of obesity rates become exponential like they are now, as opposed to linear. But there have been people with obesity forever. In fact, the first report of bariatric surgery that I could find in the literature, as I was doing research for my book, was in the 1940s. And the series contained 90 patients. So that's well before the food industry changed. And actually, I saw a manuscript, a paper. I can't remember if it was a Dutch or a Danish manuscript, but how the recruits someone did a study about the body size, or looked at the body size of, I think, army recruits in one of those countries. And it showed that the body size increase, again, started like in the 40s or 50s, before when most people attribute the change, which is the sort of the 1970s. So it's been there, it's been around, certainly not to the degree as it is now, but it's been around for forever. And actually, your point about royalty is actually a good one. So obesity used to be a disease of the rich. And in most countries, it starts that way, even now, as a disease of the rich, and then becomes a disease of the poor later, because it's because of poor food quality or cheap food and other things. But yeah, it used to, in almost every culture, society, obesity started as a disease of the wealthy. So you're not wrong there.
So I'm gonna just read something that I found. Obesity contributes to millions of deaths globally each year, particularly from non-communicable diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and some cancers. In the United States, obesity-related deaths, especially those from heart disease, have been increasing with significant rise from 1999 to 2020. Studies also show that the duration of obesity can impact health outcomes, and specific demographic groups may face higher risk. So it's a combination, right? There's the food industry, as you mentioned, but also I think we spend so much more time indoors nowadays, in front of our computers, in front of our game consoles. I was talking to ChatGPT yesterday, of all things, especially about that. Why do we spend so much time indoors? And he actually ChatGPT told me, no, that's actually, evolutionarily speaking, that's actually not the case. We humans were not designed to spend the majority of our time indoors. We're actually designed to be outside most of the time. So I would say this is contributing to anxiety, which is also contributing to overeating, and then therefore diabetes.
Yeah, I think well, there are a lot of points there. So for sure, mental health and obesity have a bidirectional relationship. So if you have obesity, you are at higher risk for developing a mental health issue. And if you have a mental health issue, you're at higher risk of suffering from obesity. And whether that's screen time or being indoors or lack of exercise, I think isn't necessarily clear, although what is clear is that exercise helps for sure, and it helps with mental health as well. So yeah, we definitely don't exercise as much as a society as we could or should. And what policy changes could change that, even if you put physical education back in schools, I'm not sure.
What do you mean back in school? It is gone?
Many schools don't have it anymore, in the U.S. anyway.
Oh my!
Budget cuts, hours of the day, more to learn, but it's counterproductive because I think
for sure
it was, it's good for a lot of people because you have to get especially if you're a younger, an adolescent or whatever, middle schooler, you need an hour to run around and get your, energy out so that you can actually sit down and learn something. But again, we sort of talk about how much time we spend on our screens or sitting down. There are cultures, let's say in the Middle East, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, where like there really is no outdoor exercise, opportunities for the average person, right? Because it's just an urban area that, was created in the middle of a place where it's 100 degrees every day. So being outside is tough. And I bring them up not to stigmatize the Gulf, but actually I bring it up mostly because the Gulf countries are right there with the U.S. in terms of obesity rates. They're the region of the world that has the worst burden of disease. And I think it is in part because they don't get outside and exercise as much as they might have or should. But I also think for them, it's likely related to the genes that they carry, because when they can ask ChatGPT about this too, but when they were designed as Bedouins wandering in the desert. And so they had to be very efficient at storing energy. And so now that they're in a world where energy is everywhere, nutrient-dense foods are everywhere, what used to be a survival advantage is now turning into a survival disadvantage. And obviously it takes eons, centuries for genes to change. And that's why there are so many people who don't believe genes are involved in obesity, because the obesity problem has skyrocketed over 50 years and genes don't change over 50 years. But epigenetics can definitely change over 50 years. And I think that's sort of the piece of the puzzle that many people don't think about.
50 years alone? Do you think it's enough?
Well, for the epigenetic stuff, you know, if you think about it, it's 2 generations, right? So if you're 30 and you have an epigenetically modified gene, you give that gene to your baby who's now, you know, 1 or 0 and then becomes 1. And so, you know, that baby's the next generation. So that baby, I should have used 25, because then 25 times 2 would have been 50. But anyway, the point is that, you know, when that baby has a kid, so that baby has a kid at 20, to make the math work, then 50 years can be enough, because now it's been passed on for 2 generations already. But, you know, again, I don't think it explains everything. I just think I do know that it impacts kids more than adults. And I do think it's just something that as we learn more about it, we will understand more about its importance. But I think it's undervalued, underappreciated currently. Because I think that, again, when things are hard to understand, then people don't want to talk about them. And because it's again, it's just, you have to, you know, say potentially, or, you know, you have to couch all your comments because you don't know for sure. But I do think that the combination of bad food, of less exercise opportunities, and epigenetic changes to genes are probably all working together to put us where we're at today.
I do have one last question. What's your views on the body positivity movement that start like happening those past few years? Like they would have jeans commercials with like obese people, and it's like, yeah, you need to be yourself. What's your views on that?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and I think every human should be allowed to live their life the way they want to live their life and be supported in that choice, right? So if you choose to smoke cigarettes, even though you know it might cause you cancer, that is your choice. And I'm not going to shame you for smoking. I might not like it. I might not want to be in the room with you when you smoke because I don't want your secondhand smoke, but I will honor your choice to do whatever you want with your life and your body and your health. And I feel the same way about body positivity. I think it is fine if you want to embrace your size and not worry about the health risks. Or frankly, a lot of people with body positivity, they actually do treat their own obesity. They just treat it with diet and exercise, which makes them metabolically healthier. It just doesn't achieve a lot of weight loss. So, and that's fine too. But my one issue with the body positivity movement is that they actually tend to blame and shame the people who actually want to get obesity treatment. And that is a problem for me, right? Like, you choose to be who you want to be, and I'm all for that, and I will support you in your body positivity. But then if my patient chooses that they want to get their obesity treated, they don't want to live in a larger body, that should be okay too. Like, they should be as accepted for choosing treatment as you should be for choosing to live in a larger body. So, my feeling about it is, it's sort of the theme that we've talked about sort of all of today. I just give people the information that's out there, and people should do what they want with that information. And, do I think that people live a healthier life at a lower body weight and without obesity? For sure. But I'm not going to force it on you, just like I'm not going to force my political views on you or anything else. Like, it's just, that's what makes being a human, is that you get to choose. Well, not in every country, but in many countries, the countries that you and I live in, you get to make choices and you get to live with those choices. And I think that that's the way I think it should be. And so, yeah, body positivity is fine. And I think part of the problem, to be honest, and this is pervasive in medicine, is that, like the body positivity people and the obesity treatment people should actually be working together, not against each other. They really should be working together to say, whatever you want for you is okay. And here's how to achieve best health if you don't want treatment, and here's how to achieve best health if you do. But instead, it's like, one group thinks the other group, it drives me nuts when doctors or providers or the medical community gets this accusation of being, pandering to the pharmaceutical companies or to the insurance companies or whatever. Like, I actually find that offensive when people say that, because you're basically telling me that I'm so unethical and I don't care about what I'm trying to do to help people, that somebody offering me like a pen with the name of the company on it is going to make me, recommend something, or, like that. I think people who make those accusations don't actually understand how medicine works, because, my paycheck didn't change whether I did 50 operations or 100 operations. My paycheck was always the same. So I wouldn't even have any reason to pander to the, insurance companies or to the device industry or the medical industry or whatever. So anyway, I guess that my point is just that, like, the people who are out there giving their opinions, the medical people are hopefully giving their best medical opinion based on their experience and the science that's out there. And it just irks me when we're accused of doing otherwise. And sometimes the fit at every size movement accuses obesity treatment clinicians of being, of just shills for the medical industry or for the insurance companies or for whatever. Which, again, I don't like it when people question my ethos. Like, that's not cool. You can question my opinions. You can argue with me about the data. You can, we can have a back and forth about any topic you want, and that's fine. But don't question my motives. That's kind of where I get a little unhappy.
All right, man. This is a huge subject. There's so much to talk about. I still have plenty of questions. We could continue, but let's maybe record the second episode in the future. I need to ask you, could you please remind the audience the name of your book, where they can get it?
Sure. Well, my book is not out yet, so they can't get it.
Oh, but, not yet.
Yeah, I'm still working on it. I had to fire my first agent, and I'm on to my second agent. It's going to be good, but you can't get it yet. But you can find me. So my YouTube channel is whatever the YouTube channel handle is, and then at Obesity Explained. My website is obesityexplained.com. There are lots of free resources on both of those places. If you want clinical help, you can link to my clinical practice from my website, but I'm not here, trying to drum up business for my clinical practice. That's not the kind of person I am. I'm here for information's sake only. And frankly, if people want to email me, they can also email me, because I don't mind, And my email is evan.nadler@epnmd.com. Because I can always just send you to my spam folder if I don't like you. I'm just kidding. I would never do that to any of your listeners.
Of course not. Of course not. All right, man. Any final remarks? Anything else? Like to
No,
say?
but definitely, I'm happy to. The topic is definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
as you can tell, I could talk about it all day. Or
I'm sure have questions, but let's leave it for another time.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. But I'm definitely happy to come back. 3 months, 6 months, or whatever. Certainly when my book comes out, which is probably going to be a year and a half at this point, but or 2. But certainly anytime, because the problem's not going away. It needs more attention, and frankly, people need to hear more about it and learn more about it. So that's what I'm here for.
All right.
Cool, man. Nice meeting you. Nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you. It was fun. Thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure.
Yep, same here.
All right, everyone, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I want to read all of your comments, so leave a comment. See you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. If it's your first time watching the show, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rank the show 5 stars. This will ensure that the podcast is recommended to even more people and allow me to keep doing what I love. Check out now the BruCast store, Explore store, filled with awesome goodies from hoodies to t-shirts to mugs. We've got you covered. Stay in style with BruCast. Embrace the shock, set the trend. Buy now at bru-cast.com/store. Again, that's bru-cast.com/store. Link on the description below. Be a BruCast model and get free stuff. We'd love to see how you and your loved ones enjoy BruCast. Snap a picture of yourself, your family, your friends, or even your pets wearing BruCast merch, or watching an episode of the show and send it to us and become part of BruCast. We'll feature you and your pictures at the end of every episode, just like the ones you're seeing on the screen right now. You can upload your pictures at bru-cast.com/contact or tag us on social media. Alright everyone, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much and see you next time. Bye bye.